BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the Farming Today podcast with me, Charlotte Smith. In this episode, £500,000 of UK government money for a soil project in Ukraine. More on that later. First, are you winter ready? Bit of an odd question for the 1st of August, I admit, but it is one that the Environment Agency is asking of English farmers. Now, this is all to do with slurry and how to store it. When cattle come into sheds to be kept out of the weather over winter, the manure they produce is cleaned out and the resulting mix of manure, water and sometimes bedding is slurry. This waste is kept in tanks or lagoons and then used as fertiliser on the fields. When farmers can spread slurry is limited because if it's raining, the slurry runs off the field and into streams and rivers and becomes simply pollution. Over the last few very wet winters, cattle have had to be kept in longer than usual, and some farmers have had problems storing all the slurry. Charles Bentley from the farming and environmental consultancy ADAS advises farmers on their slurry storage.
It has always been an issue. It is becoming more of a headache for farmers because of changes in rules or interpretation of rules and changes in weather patterns and, for many, ageing infrastructure.
Which all adds up to it being a real problem, doesn't it? Because if you've got to keep the animals in for longer than you'd expected, that slurry has to go somewhere.
Indeed. And the old standard was for a minimum of 4 months slurry storage. The Environment Agency in England are now recommending 6 months in order to facilitate compliance with the farming rules for water.
So if you've got 4 months of storage already sorted, how easy is it to then add storage for another 2 months?
It depends on the store and the farm and the situation and the assumption that you've already got 4 months storage. If you have an above-ground steel store in good condition that was designed to take additional rings, then actually adding additional storage and possibly a cover to keep the rainwater off the store is not technically difficult.
So you're sort of extending upwards?
You're extending upwards. If you've got an earthbank lagoon, then digging a bit more can be pretty straightforward and relatively inexpensive. If you're not in either of those situations, then things are much more challenging.
There are grants, though, for this sort of thing?
There are currently grants in Wales, potentially a 50% grant on capital investment in slurry storage, up to £50,000. There have been grants in England, which again are a 50% funding, though they're taking a long time to work their way through, and relatively small numbers of schemes have been approved so far.
Farmers will say there has been pressure over the years for them to keep more animals to try and maximise profits or even just to break even, depending on the year. But fundamentally, if you haven't got the storage, you shouldn't really have the livestock, surely.
If you are faced with a situation where you can't store slurry, and there are a number of reasons that may arise, typically it's excess rainfall. Last year was a particular case in point. Then you do need to look at spreading options with the agreement of the Environment Agency and putting into place contingency plans.
Charles Bentley there from ADAS. Well, while we're talking excess rainfall, let's turn to our focus this week, water management. Small changes in the way a river catchment is managed can have a big impact. Things like reconnecting floodplains, re-wiggling rivers and slowing the flow upstream can reduce the flood and pollution risk and encourage more biodiversity. A whole Cumbria strategy, which involves 3 river trusts, the Environment Agency and Natural England, has just been named as one of only 4 finalists for a prestigious global award, the Thiess International River Prize. It's up against 4 projects in the USA and Albania. To see the kind of work the Cumbrian River Restoration Partnership Programme is doing, Kaz Graham went to a beck in the south of the Lake District.
So they'll cross the river on this little river crossing section.
Beautiful. Highland cows.
Yeah.
Big horns.
So we're stood in or next to Holbeck, which is a little tributary off of the Kent. It goes up into the hills towards Skeggleswater and the top of Kentmere.
And I'm with David Kelly, who farms at Elfhow in the Kentmere Valley and also in Little Langdale as well. Cattle and sheep, and you have been doing all kinds of river restoration work here.
We've been working with South Cumbria Rivers Trust and we've been subdividing fields, planting trees. So as you look up the river here, you can see the river stretching out directly in front of us. We've put fences along the edges and you can see the longer grass stopping the nutrients from the fields washing into the beck. And we were careful on the design of the project so that we don't limit access to the river for water for the animals, so that we can combine agricultural practice alongside nature so that it doesn't inhibit it. We don't want to worry about losing a water source. So,
as you said, David, you've been working with the South Cumbria Rivers Trust on this, and Emma Wright from the Trust is here paddling in the beck with us this morning as well. Emma, what were you hoping that this work would achieve?
I was hoping the work would provide better habitats for a range of wildlife, mainly for river species, for salmon and for trout and for bullhead and the white-claw crayfish, which are a native population, but also hoping to have a wider benefit with the farm working together with nature, so you get multiple benefits across the landscape.
Yeah, now this farm is just a few miles upstream from the town of Kendal, which suffered really severe flooding in Storm Desmond 10 years ago now. One of the things people want from water management often is for water to be held back upstream and to make a difference to flooding downstream. Is that work happening here?
It is, yes. So further upstream from when we're standing, we've made a cut in the embankment that allows the river to spill out onto the floodplain during high flows. And that connects up to a series of small scrapes and ponds to help store that water. And then it will slowly release back into the beck once the natural river has reduced its height as well.
OK, well, look, we're just going to cross back across the river now and we're going to go and have a look at some of the other work that you've done further upstream.
We're just walking through some of the river buffer strip, through the long grass. More insects and bird's foot, trefoil, we've got some bugle, we've got some longer grasses here. There's some different species of trees that we've planted here. There's some willow popping out the top of a tree guard here.
And if we'd been here, 3 years ago, this was just field?
Yeah. So you're stood in the scrape now. So in the high flow, the water will be rushing around your ankles. It'll be coming out of the river here and filling the ponds that we've walked past.
The management that you're doing here, it's actually part of a much wider partnership that's restored nearly 100 kilometres of rivers across 3 major river catchments in Cumbria. What difference does it make to you, Emma, when you're working in partnership with other rivers trusts and with Natural England and the Environment Agency also?
It makes such a big difference working in partnership. The more that we can do it and the more joint up approach that we have, the better the outcome that we get, and we can actually see that outcome physically in our environment.
Kaz Graham reporting there, and the winner of the Thiess International River Prize will be announced at the International River Symposium in Brisbane next month. £500,000 is going from the UK government to a project aiming to improve soils in Ukraine. The ongoing research being run by the Royal Agricultural University has identified significant damage to soils from the war there, things like heavy metal contamination from bombardments. This new money will help set up soil labs. As we've reported, the war in Ukraine, known as the breadbasket of Europe because of its importance as a grain producer, has had a massive impact on farming, from direct attacks on farms to staff leaving to join the army. Kees Hunzinger is a Dutch farmer who's been running farms in Ukraine. He's currently on one of the farms in the middle of the country, where it's harvest time.
It was going okay, then we had some rain, and so we've stopped now. It's first day of sunshine after a few days of rain. So we'll probably start harvesting tomorrow again. We finished winter barley with an average of 9 tons per hectare. We're halfway canola, rapeseed.
I could be having this conversation with a farmer almost anywhere in the world, couldn't I? Because you're just talking about yields and weather, but presumably you're also thinking about war.
Yeah, we're always thinking about war. I mean, we feel it every day. I mean, not that the bombs and the rockets are hitting our fields every day. That happens more closer to the front line, but they fly over our farm nearly every night.
For farmers who are nearer the front line, what sort of impact is the war having?
They're leveling out towns near the front line, the Russians are. But on the outskirts of the front lines and on the outskirts of the cities, Ukrainian farmers are harvesting their wheat crop. I send you a video where you can see it. You know, and there's a drone hanging in the air on one side, it films an explosion, and then it turns to the other side, and it's a combine harvester harvesting wheat. So yeah, it is, even for me, that's really hard to imagine how those guys can work there.
We're just about to speak to somebody from a British university. They're doing a big project in Ukraine, which the UK government is now giving money towards, about the damage, longer-term damage to soil from the bombardments, which is not, I would imagine, a current concern, but will be in the future.
I guess it will. I mean, we have had a few drones landing on our fields, I think in total 6 or 7 over the course of these 3 years. Yeah, and there's a smaller or a bigger crater, and there's all kinds of spare parts lying around from the explosion, and probably also some leftover fuels or oils leaking into the soil. But I don't think that has a real impact. But yeah, on the front line you see fields which are shattered or covered with craters of explosions, and it's also full of unexploded munition, and there's mines all over the place. So I guess, those fields are really hard to farm, to bring back under cultivation. But it's only the front line of 1,000 kilometers. I think it's fairly limited. I mean, Ukraine should focus on, in the world, should focus on Ukraine winning the war and chasing the Russians out, in my opinion. Then we can check soils.
Kees Huizinga in Ukraine. Professor Mark Horton, Pro-Vice-Chancellor for Research and Enterprise at the Royal Agricultural University, who's leading their Ukraine project, says they hope to work out just how damaged the soils are.
So our project is really trying to measure how much the farmland for Ukraine has been impacted by the war. I mean, certainly, as the types of armaments have changed, the range of those armaments have changed. So when the war broke out, it was a few shell holes and some missiles. But now it's these Shahed drones, it's glide bombs, it's parachute bombs, and of course more and more missiles. And there are fields in Ukraine with literally hundreds, if not thousands, of craters from these armaments. And I suppose the big unknown is to what extent nasty things are being released from these explosions. Nasty rare elements, heavy metals, which are in these armaments.
Of all the things Ukrainians have to worry about, soil quality might not seem that important right now. But I guess for the future, it's going to be a big deal.
Yes, I mean, obviously, Ukraine has these wonderful black soils, which are just full of carbon and incredibly productive. But the critical thing is, as these soils have been contaminated by these nasty heavy metals, to what extent are they being taken up by the crops? And of course, Ukraine being a massive exporter of food, how much that's affecting global food security.
So what will £500,000 from the government mean for this project?
Well, most of it's going, of course, to Ukraine, and we're taking 10,000 soil samples across 5 regions, what are known as oblasts, along the front line, and sampling both craters, there was also whole fields, looking at that contamination. In some ways, it's reassurance that the soil isn't being that badly contaminated by these armaments, or if they are, how we can recognise them and how we can remediate for it.
What difference do you hope it will make in the long run?
Well, we all pray and hope that this horrible war is going to finish anytime soon. And what we really want to do is get Ukrainian agriculture back on its feet again when peace breaks out, and that we can be sure that the food that comes out of Ukraine is safe for all to eat.
Professor Mark Horton from the Royal Agricultural University. That's it from us. I'm Charlotte Smith. The producer is Rebecca Rooney, and Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.